As Americans get ready to vote in the 2024 presidential election, what's being done to make sure the count is accurate and secure? Some states are taking steps to improve confidence in vote tabulations, while others have hit roadblocks after 2020. Florida's missteps after the contentious 2000 election led to major reforms. In a Firing Line special, PBS's Margaret Hoover looks at how Florida fixed its problems and why those remedies may help states in 2024.
When was the moment you realized that your state was going to be the deciding state in the 2000 election?
You know, it was about 2 o'clock in the morning. My brother got a call from Al Gore conceding, and then literally Gore called back and said, "I'm taking it back."
Where someone doesn't clearly punch their ballot correctly and there's a hanging chad on the back.
And rather than do what now sadly happens more often than not in politics, which is we yap at each other and yell at each other and blame the other team, we reformed it in Florida in a bipartisan way, and I'm really proud of that.
This bill will create a law that will be the model for the rest of the nation.
All right, coming in.
Okay.
So this is our tabulation room. This is really where all the magic happens. Part of our goal here is that speed of results to make people feel confident in the results.
We don't run a single national election. That's not what's going to happen on November 5th. There's going to be about 10,000 little local elections happening.
Would you say the single most important thing to bestow confidence from the electorate into the results of the election is the quick processing and counting of ballots?
Yes, that plus the loser accepting the result, that's kind of a big deal.
There's so many conspiracies now about everything. The trust factor in our political system is at an all-time low.
Is there election fraud happening? Of course.
I still hear the noise in my head of the yelling, the banging, and feel that fear that we felt that night.
I just want to find 11,780 votes, which is one more than we have.
That call with former President Trump, you've written how it turned your life upside down in some ways. You and your aides spent hours, days, weeks refuting the various conspiracy theories.
And the results remain unchanged.
In 2020, it was not really a close election. So that is categorically different in all major ways from what happened in 2000.
Tonight, we spotlight 8 states, including 6 battlegrounds.
So this would just have Margaret Hoover here, and it would have this barcode that links to your voter profile.
To see how they are preparing for November.
90% of our problem in Wisconsin is perception versus fraud. If we just fix that perception problem, we wouldn't have had the snowball effect in 2020, and we sure wouldn't again in 2024.
We need to get back to the fact that we're all actually doing pretty good in this country. Our system is the best in the world. Our elections are the most secure in the world. But people who don't want to necessarily believe it can be easily exploited by those who can gain from it financially and politically.
Is it hard to see this as a Republican?
I think it's hard to see it as an American. Counting votes is not a Democratic value or a Republican value. It's an American value.
Now, I spoke with Margaret Hoover about the documentary and what she learned about the election process. Here's our interview. Margaret Hoover joins us now. Margaret, welcome and congratulations on this project.
Sandra, thanks so much, and thanks very much for bringing it to your viewers' attention.
So, Margaret, in this documentary, you report that elections experts say our country has the most free, fair, and secure elections in the world. Now, you got an inside look in the elections process at about 8 states, including Florida. What did you find?
Look, there are a lot of surprises that I think the average voter doesn't understand about our elections. There's been, because our country is so polarized, a bit of hesitancy and doubt cast upon the integrity of our election systems here in the United States. And what I learned is absolutely our elections are far and away the most transparent elections in the world. They are the most supervised, fastidiously sort of documented and executed. They are secure, more secure than anywhere else in the world. More than 95%. In fact, the Brennan Center believes that 98% of ballots in this election cycle will actually have a paper trail, right? So one of the things that causes doubt and about the integrity of the election is this supposition or this idea, the conspiracy theories, that somehow our election data might be manipulated without having any record of it. That's not true. Almost 98% of our actual votes are recorded on paper, and we can go back and count them all. So we have a secure election, a fair election, a highly transparent set of elections. And by the way, it's not just one election. What's so extraordinary about the United States' elections is that we have 50 states that are electing electors on the same day, more than 10,000 jurisdictions across the country. And to be able to have 160 million people go to the polls in 10,000 different jurisdictions and be able to say that it is absolutely fundamentally the most transparent, secure, and fair set of elections executed anywhere in the world, probably better than at any time in human history, is a real achievement. And it's important that we know that as we head towards November.
So, Margaret, former Florida Governor Jeb Bush talked about our state's historic role in the 2000 election that was so contentious, and that eventually led to bipartisan election reform. Several experts say that those reforms made Florida the gold standard as far as elections go. What did Florida get right?
So in the 2000 elections, Republicans and Democrats, after Florida became a laughingstock of the nation. And, you know, it's not fair to Florida because Florida hasn't gotten credit for fixing their elections after having been, the jurisdiction that supervised the closest election in American history up to that point. I mean, 537 votes in Florida made the difference in the 2000 election. And the Supreme Court, of course, had to interfere. And anytime the Supreme Court interferes in an election, that casts an illusion or a shadow of illegitimacy on an election. Now, of course, the election was legitimate, but there were a lot of questions after Florida's 2000 debacle. And so Jeb Bush and Democrats, I mean, Jeb Bush was pretty humble in this documentary about his role because, and as we discussed it in the interview, he brought Democrats together, he brought activist groups together, he brought Republican groups together, he brought conservative activist groups together, sort of anybody who had a stake in the outcome of the elections and wanted to have a role in how to remake Florida's election system into the gold standard for the United States, had a seat at the table. And ultimately, I mean, the real tell about how successful Florida was at reforming is that when this bill passed through the Florida legislature, it passed almost unanimously. I mean, there was no opposition. And that is one of the things that Jeb Bush is quite proud of and should be part of his legacy, is that he turned Florida into a gold standard for election integrity after having supervised one of the most unfortunate episodes in American election administration.
So, Margaret, you said that Homeland Security during the Trump administration said the 2020 election was the most secure in history. So why are there still so many doubts about what happened?
Well, one of the reasons is that there are major candidates and a major party that insists that they still, Donald Trump. I mean, let's not talk around it. I mean, the Republican nominee for the presidency still claims that he won the election from time to time. Sometimes he says he didn't, and sometimes he says he did. Mm-hmm. But, anytime there's a leader of a political party that casts doubt on the integrity of the election, people are going to have doubts about the integrity of the election. And there's a whole cottage industry that has really blossomed around the conspiracy theories around the election. And what I want to do is shine a light on what happened in the states. You and I and anyone in Florida can walk in to supervise with your own eyes how elections in Broward County are administered now. Broward County is really a paragon of virtue in election administration now. I mean, go see Joe Scott, the commissioner there. He will walk you through exactly how ballots are processed, exactly how they're tabulated, exactly how Florida, with 10 million plus votes, 2 time zones, knows who won the state at the end of election day every time, because of the fastidiousness, the attention to detail, and the real integrity with which they operate over there in Broward County, and frankly throughout the state. You can go into any area, any election administration county, you can go into any county to see how the elections are administered in Florida and walk away with a high degree of confidence of how it looks. So the idea is there are conspiracy theories out there. Sometimes people like conspiracy theories for whatever reason, they gravitate towards them. But if you want to know the truth, you can get it with your own eyes by going and observing yourself. And that's what I wanted to encourage people to do. And for people who can't do it, they can see on this documentary, we went and did it with our own cameras. I went and interviewed, all of these election officials in multiple states, 8 states, to just shine a light on actually how well we do it and exactly how we do it, because it's different in every state as well.
Margaret, what would you say, as my final question here, what would you say Americans need to prepare for in this election coming up? What do you think we should expect?
Well, it's hard to look into a crystal ball and know what the future is. But if past is prologue, we do know that there are a group of folks out there who want to sow doubt in the American electorate because they want chaos. Chaos creates uncertainty and then creates opportunity for to exploit potential power grabs. I mean, this happens all over the world. We're not immune from it here. So what we need to know is to be observant citizens with our eyes wide open and to not just trust the transparency and integrity of our system, but go check it out for ourselves and tell your neighbors and your community organizations that what you've seen, because we should know that we do have the most secure, fair elections in the world and transparent elections in the world. But we should also be vigilant in order to continue to ensure that they remain fair, secure, and transparent. And know that there will be conspiracy theories. There will be things that people say. Let's be fastidious about evaluating them and ensuring that the vote in November is free, fair, transparent, and secure.
Margaret, thank you so much for your time, and thank you for your reporting on this.
Thank you so much, Sandra.
And you can watch Counting the Vote, a Firing Line special with Margaret Hoover online. You can find it on our website at WGCU.org and also look for it on our social media platforms.